Hey, well, happy Monday. I trust everyone had a great fifth weekend or July 4th weekend, I should say. And today, we're kind of at that halfway point of the year, and we're going, okay, how do we, if we're behind, how do we recover in the second half, get to where we intended to be? Uh, what is going to get us there? And today, we're going to introduce just a conversation around something Gary Keller talked to us about at the beginning of the shift. Gary Keller said it's the agent with the right messages that match the market combined with the right MOFIRs, offers, if you will. MOFIR, make offer for immediate response, is the person that's going to win the market. And today we're finding that to be really true. And the challenge is what are those messages that are going to get us to more kitchen tables, give us more at bats with potential clients to help them navigate this business as unusual market that we find ourselves in today. So that's our journey. My name's Steve Schlueter. I'm the co-coach of a program called Never Ending Referrals with Tammy Younks. Tammy couldn't be with us today, so I'll be flying solo. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat or raise your hand. We'll bring you into the conversation as we go today. Really encourage this to be interactive, and I'll go to you at times. And if you'd like to unmute yourself, come into the conversation, go into the chat, please do so. And let's go to work. So we're going to talk message and MOFIR madness, getting buyers and sellers off the fence. And I think we can all agree that the consumer, there are certainly a lot of people on the fence. They're waiting to see what is going to happen. And the truth is, with the right message and the right offers, we can move a lot of people off the fence. We can at least get them on a strategy or a timeline or, on purpose if they have a desire to make a move. And maybe they're holding back because they're in a state of confusion. So let me set the stage for us with a couple of things as we go. So today, we're going to talk about being the real estate economist slash consultant. And we have to be this more than ever before. Um, there is so much clickbait, there's so much confusion that if they don't have a trusted source, the easy thing for them to do is stay on the fence and stay on the sideline. So we're going to talk about those messages that match the market. We're going to talk about what is this thing called an offer that is going to get me to more kitchen tables. And then we'll wrap up with the 4 C's formula and we'll go from there. So let's start off with this. And everything Tammy Youngst and I start with these types of webinars, we start with this slide, and because it really is the macro slide. Now, remember, I said macro; it's not the micro, and it's the macro slide of everything that's really necessary to have massive success with your database. And let's touch on this again. By the way, it's called the trust triangle. And it comes from Harvard University. The Harvard Business Review did a study of executives who were known for having really great leadership. They had the people they led really trusted them. They had developed this level of trust with the people they led. And they went to look at what was behind this trust, what was underneath it, what underpinned it. And essentially, it was these 3 points that they found. Number one was logic. And essentially, the logic piece was they knew that the person's reasoning and judgment was sound. They knew that they knew that they understood what they were talking about, and they could follow their train of thought. So it was really clear to understand. It wasn't complicated. It's really clear. Number two was empathy. And the empathy piece, well, it was this. They believed that the leader cared about them, their well-being, and their well-being. And all of this was in a way that was very authentic. They felt like they were experiencing the real person. There was this genuineness to the conversation, to the relationship. It was real, and it made it really. It brought it full circle that really established this deep level of trust. And so, what we're going to address today is how do we deliver? So, if this is the macro recipe, for massive success with our database, getting to more kitchen tables, getting people to ask us, listen to us, trust us with everything related to real estate right now, not the crazy clickbait media. We have to deliver on the logic point. And so, how do we make sure they understand that you understand the market and you understand the opportunities of the market? And they should ask you and sit down with you to discover those opportunities. Empathy. How are we going to make sure that they feel cared for and it's all in a genuine, authentic way? It's never salesy. Um, it's always coming from this place of contribution. So, and we'll touch on all of this a little bit today, and then we'll tell you how you can learn more and how you can go deeper on these concepts. And yet, let's start off with some of the headlines that are right now creating consumer confusion. And let me ask you this: what are some of the things? Let's have some of y'all chime in. What are the things that your consumer is confused about that has them sitting on the sideline? People aren't getting in the market because of blank.
Rates.
So we got interest rates. What else?
Elections.
Oh gosh, yes. What are they thinking about elections?
They want to wait and see what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
What's going to happen? Are rates going to go down leading up to it? Is the economy going to go in recession? Right? All of that. What else?
They think we're in a bubble and it's all going to burst like before.
Ah, yeah. If anybody really was around during that 2008 to 2012, slide, they're very cautious. So they think we might be, due for a crash. Okay. What else?
They don't have some place to buy
Low
inventory.
inventory. Yeah. I mean, we've got my markets right now. We've got a gift right now of having 4 months of inventory in my San Antonio and my Austin markets. And yet I'm out instructing bold in Whittier, California, 1.2 months supply. I've got some places out in the East Coast, Columbus, Ohio, heading out to do bold in October. They're talking about 1.2, 1.3 month supply. And so we're going to talk about this little issue of supply and demand and how it plays into some of our messaging as well to help people get off the fence. Okay, one more. Anybody else have anything else, or does that kind of cover it?
I feel for some sellers, they would like to put their home in the market and purchase something else. And there's a two-dimension factor there. One, they have a lower interest rate, and one that, than the one that would occur if they purchase now.
Mm-hmm.
And two, there's not enough inventory for them to choose from. So it's a double-edged sword for them.
Yeah, I'm going to have a higher interest rate, and I don't know where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole inventory lockup scenario that we're experiencing. And so, well, in many markets, and yet some not. I mean, in Texas, we went from hyper low inventories. Now, many of our markets are experiencing 3 to 4 months of inventory now, which is a gift because it feels more like a normal market. In fact, it feels slow and is just really normal because we came out of that COVID crazy era. And yet let's talk about where this might be going in the future and how we navigate some of this and what the conversations may be. So let's go back to, first off, let's just think about how the consumer gets even further confused and sits on the fence. Now, some of y'all seen me share this before on other sessions recently, and this is, of course, this Grant Cardone. And I see this headline that says, real estate investor warns U.S. is entering the greatest correction of his lifetime. And I'm going, that's not the market I'm in, or that's not the market I know. And read the article, and it's not very clear. And there happened to be a 4-minute video, and I began to watch the video. And at about the 3-minute mark, it says, Grant Cardone says, and by the way, this is not the single family residential real estate market. This is multifamily and commercial in certain markets. And, he's talking about the transfer of wealth in commercial real estate and some of the multifamily projects that have gotten overdeveloped. And I'm going, okay, I didn't think Grant Cardone was an idiot, but I was about to think he was an idiot because the story, the headline didn't fit with any markets that I really understood. And then, now, by the way, here's what happens. Most consumers read the headline, maybe they read part of the article. One that didn't watch the associated video and dive into it long enough never heard the message that this didn't apply to single family residential real estate. So, and by the way, guys, are there a lot of examples of stuff like this out here that's clickbait? It's out there like crazy, and it puts the consumer in this really weird place of uncertainty. And so, number one, you've got to know what's out there. And let me give you a pro tip. Here's a little hack that I'm going to encourage you to put in play. And it's a weekly routine that I've got. And when it comes to establishing clarity around messaging and MOFIRs, well, first, you've got to be really clear as what is the messaging that the consumer's getting from people other than you. And so if you've got an iPhone, subscribe to Apple News. If you've got a Google device, I'm sure they have a news service as well. And I subscribe to Apple News, and I've conditioned my search to provide me things on real estate, interest rates, mortgage, economy. And so I get all these headlines. And then throughout the week, I'll save them. And I'm not going to read them word for word, but just what's a headline that speaks to our industry that my consumers might see that might affect their thoughts about real estate. And then the end of the week sometime, I'll take a pause for 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour, and I'm going to go through and go, okay, what are these that need to be debunked? Or what is the consumer hearing that's not real? And what's the message that I've got to put out to the marketplace to debunk the stories that are getting created about the residential real estate market that might not serve my hyper-local market? So some of you that were talking about low inventories, your messaging is going to be quite different than what I'm running in San Antonio and what I'm running in our Austin markets because we have a different inventory scenario. And yet some things are the same, and we can speak to those. And so let's dive into this. We're going to talk message and MOFIRs, and I'm going to give you some examples of this here in just a moment. And let's take a look at this. So in my market, now we'll talk about some of your markets in a bit. In my market, these are some of the types of messages that we build communication around. So whether it's email campaign, print campaign, social post that I have my agents putting out, they can build some messages around these types of conversations that match the market. Let's take a look. So an example in my market, buyers get breathing room, list to sales price ratio. Right now, depending on which sector of my markets you're looking at, you've got anywhere from 93 to 96% list to sales price ratio. That means in some of my sectors in the market, we're negotiating 7% off the original list price. We've got a campaign running right now called the upside of elevated interest rates. We'll come back and talk about that one in a minute. In fact, I'll even tell you where you can find a smart plan on that. Market stability. In my markets, we have very consistent, steady job growth, job retention. So we have very stable marketplace. First-time buyers, assistance programs, they have way less competition today, and the opportunity to get incentives, particularly not just from builders, but also from resellers. My assistant's on here right now, and her house was on the market recently, and she was offering a selling concession to help people pay closing cost or buy down the interest rate. So even resellers in some markets, are doing that. We're going to talk about this one somewhat extensive today because these folks, you that are in the markets that are low supply, we've got to talk about the law of supply and demand and how it's factoring into the future of the housing market where you are, because for many of our markets, the low supply is likely not going away, maybe not for another 12 or 15 years. You could be in a pronounced cycle of low supply for well into the future. And to help people make their best decisions now, we've got to educate them on this. The future of interest rates, what's going to drive it? And well, of course, we know the reason it's elevated is inflation. And yet there's another factor that I think it's important to help our consumers understand in its demographics and the impact it's having on the consumer spending, which is fueling inflation and likely going to continue to fuel inflation well into the years ahead. We might have a little dip recession. It probably won't be deep, and it may not happen at all. You can afford your dream home. One of the campaigns we ran here a while back was, did you know you could still get an interest rate of 4.99%? And that was possible because of what some of our builder incentives offerings were in our market. And so anyway, we had like 4.99 easily accessible in the market. You can afford your dream. Buy the dip. This was one we ran during the fall. And in your low inventory markets, make a note of this. Buy the dip. Go back and look at this past fall and winter. Did you have a seasonal dip where temporarily inventory came up just a bit, demand went down just a bit, and maybe even median price settled down a little bit? I know in our markets, we saw a pronounced seasonal dip, which we hadn't had in years. All during COVID crazy, it just stayed full on 100%. And so as we look ahead to the fall, be thinking about a message around buy the dip. It's the seasonal shift. You'll have more choices, fewer people that are competing, for now, hopefully more choices if you have a dip. And of course, timing the market is near impossible. So we're going to break some of this down. And yet the exercise for you in looking at your market, what are the message concepts like this, the construct of a message that I would put together, that I would then build a message around and then make an offer to get people to sit down? So here's our message. We've got all these various message frameworks, if you will, or constructs. And then the MOFIR that we've been using pretty much primarily with almost all of our communication has been, if you have any possible interest in buying or selling a home in the next 12 to 24 months, find out why the right time for you might be right now. Call me to schedule a no obligation strategy session. So if it's interest rates, you put out a message around interest rates, the opportunities around interest rates, the future, the history, the future of interest rates, enough to create curiosity, not too much to overwhelm them. And then you make the offer of the strategy session if they have any plans to do anything in the next 12 to 24 months. Now, the reason the next 12 to 24 months is, well, if they're sitting on the sideline and they're really ready, we want them to have a conversation with us now. And our job is to get to the kitchen table and explore their situation and what they desire to accomplish and determine if for them moving forward now might be a smart move. So let me hear from you guys. What are some messages that y'all are using successfully that are getting your database to communicate back with you and talk to you about the market? Anybody have something that's really been kind of on point? Naples has 11 months inventory. Wow, Kim, you get the prize for the most. And of course, why does Naples have more inventory is because it's a discretionary second home market. And a lot of those folks that, are holding back, not making that discretionary spending on a luxury second home when they're living in uncertainty. And of course, that is causing softening, in a market like Naples.
I agree.
Yeah. So let me change this right here. So anybody, what do you have a message that's working for you? Getting you to kitchen tables.
It really just depends on the type of conversation you're having. And all conversations are different because you can branch off. I mean, you have your younger generation, you have your middle class, you also have your people that need to step down. So everybody is the people that are not talking to experts are relying on news media, they're relying on social media, and they're focusing on the negative ads. So I had a great conversation with this young couple who just got engaged, and they're like, "Yeah, we're thinking about holding off. This market's horrible." I'm like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Look, I get it. This market is not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if this market was for you and you didn't know about it, don't you feel that you would lose a little bit out of it?" And we got into a conversation, and they're like, "Well, we were thinking about waiting for about 5 years for the rates to go down." Okay, so let's say you're right. The interest rates go down 5 years from now. But I'm not saying, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. If
Mm-hmm.
you were to find that house that falls in the 9 to 10, this is the property you need to get qualified. This is the property you need to look at the monthly payment and say, can I make this payment for the next 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Because let's say you're right. The interest rates go from 7 to 5. Guess what's also going to increase? Buyer demand. You're going to have more buyers coming in there. So you're going to pay an extra 15,000 on a bidding war. Guess
Yeah.
what's also going to go up in 5 years? Equity. Since 1941, the market, real estate market, has only gone down 7 times. That
Mm-hmm.
means it has slowly increased or greatly increased. So in 5 years, you're probably looking at another $10,000 to $15,000. So what's your monthly payment going to be then?
Mike, that's
That
brilliant.
opened up the whole conversation.
Yeah. And Mike, see, that's exactly how we need to show up today. And, and by the way, you have to have certainty about your market. One of the things we're going to touch on today, is, in fact, do me a favor in the chat. I want y'all to tell me yes or no. Do you believe interest rates will be sub 5.75% in the next 2 years? Yes or no? Actually, even sub 6%. Yes or no in the next 2 years? Interesting. We started off with a lot of no's, then we got a spattering of yeses. Um, yeah. And so, and by the way, here's what I'm going to share with you. In fact, let me go back to the screen. And so when we think about, messaging, interest rates is one of these big factors. And we think about the future of interest rates. You got this guy on the left that's going, yep, interest rates are going to be great. They're going to come down. You got the guy on the right going, I'm kind of pessimistic on lower rates. I don't think we're going to really get much in the way of lower rates. And then you got this person in the middle just going, I don't know. And here's what I'm going to say. Don't be the person in the middle. Whatever you believe, be certain about it. And by the way, when I say be certain about it, be certain in a way that's backed up by something factual that you can make a case for your belief. Don't make it just opinion or hope. Look at it and say, what do you really believe? And I will tell you, my belief is we're going to stay elevated, likely for some time. Now, that's my belief. And I will put out messaging in a way that supports that belief, in a way that helps people say, maybe I need to get in the market because, rates could actually go up. In fact, I'll share with y'all an email. In fact, you can find this if you go to the Smart Plan Library if you're with Keller Williams. There's just in my Google sheet. We did one on the upside of elevated interest rates. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but it says, what are the upsides of elevated interest rates? Well, less competition, more opportunities. And even in low inventory markets, if rates drop, you will have more competition. And it's going to be even more of a challenge. And as Mike said, the bidding wars, return. Negotiating power in your hands. And so right now, in some markets not, you are able to negotiate much better terms in your transaction, certainly much better than you would in a bidding war. And then in markets like mine that have 3 and 4 months inventory, negotiating power is really in your hands. That won't be the case if we get in a low interest rate environment and a low supply environment. Um, and in some markets, you got a bounty of choices. Now, I said that here because that's what's true in my market. And lock in your rate now. So these are 4 points we said were up the upside of elevated interest rates. Because read this line here at the bottom right here where my cursor is. It says the person in 1973 that said, I'm going to wait for rates to get back below 8% would have waited 20 years until 1993. So, Mike, to your point there, I mean, even 5 years is no guarantee of lower interest rates. And then,
right. And it's not going to, the interest rates are not going to go any lower because the Fed has to play catch up. When the interest rates were 2.5, they have never been that low in real estate history at all. Never. And the reason why that happened is because the Fed remembered what happened in 08. They don't want that to happen again. So they basically went to the banks and said, hey, go charge your interest rate. We're not charging a Fed rate. Keep the economy going. But we want our money back. So within that 3 years, the Fed took a hit. If you do the math, it's going to take the Fed anywhere from 4 to about 8 years to recoup the money they lost. And with the same time, they need to slow this real estate market down. Within those 3 years after COVID, we had more real estate transactions, purchases, equity loans, and refinances that we ever had in the last 3 years. All our inventory is gone. So they have to slow the roll. That's why we have high interest rates. They're recouping, and they're trying to slow the market down.
Yeah.
The Fed, they want the prices to come down a little bit to slow the inventory down.
And here's the challenge. There are factors working against them that are going to make that very difficult for them. And so thus the argument that rates are going to stay elevated. So let's thank you, Mike. So let's dive further into this. So if we think about some of the headlines. Now, if you're like me and you're a believer that interest rates are going to stay elevated, then go find the things that support that. That's where having that hack of tracking the headlines and going back and what are the relevant quotes that experts are saying that supports the position so that you can help people move forward. The last thing you can do is be that somebody asks you, what are interest rates going to do? You can't go, oh, that's not going to help somebody move forward. So you have to have certainty, whichever way you believe. And if you can find the things to support it, so be it. And I'm just going to make this point, and that is, if you believe that, and they go down, that's great. You're a hero. And of course, they did wait, or you convince them to date the rate, and they could refinance later. How do they move forward today? Think about this though. If they wind up like that person in 1973. That we're going to wait, and rates actually kept going up and up and up. They either settled at a higher rate or they missed out. And so today could be like that time. And are there some stories that support that? So let's go back into the headlines. And by the way, we're going to send you a recording of all this. So, I mean, if you're just clicking away, screenshotting and all that, feel free. And yet we're going to send this. So Barron's, think inflation is cooling, think again. And I'm not going to get into the details of these, but there are stories out there that are going to support what you're looking for. And then you got to say, do I believe this? I mean, does this make sense to me? Kevin O'Leary, the Shark Tank, what do they call him, Mr. Wonderful, says Americans should get used to the idea that the Fed won't offer reprieve to rates in 2024. Plus, why he says you'd be mistaken for thinking otherwise. Now, by the way, here's something I want to share with you that most people don't really have an understanding of. And if inflation is the issue, what fuels inflation? And part of that is the consumer. Now, this comes from our buyer consulting guide that we do for our market center agents and for our Never Ending Referrals community. And in our consulting guide, we have this conversation where we said, okay, the truth is that the consumer is 70% of the economy. Why have they had such a difficult time taking the consumer, down and less consumption so that inflation would ebb? And the challenge is demographics. And right now, you have the millennial generation, and this is the research by economist Harry Dent. And I happened to start reading Harry Dent back in the early 2000s at the behest of Gary Keller. I was a team leader for Gary Keller for 4.5 years. Got to spend every Monday with Gary, and Gary said, I want you to read demographics, study demographics. Harry Dent has got some good research on demographics. And he said, a lot of other things impact the economy, but demographics just kind of are, and you should understand them. And so if you think about this right now, most millennials are in this 30 to 46 range, and it's the family formation period of their life. And generally expenses are going up and they're spending more money. Now, the earliest millennials will start entering the 46 to 52 age group, which is what Dent says is the peak spending years for the consumer in 2028. So the millennial is already a spending force in this young family formation group, if you will. And then they're going to be moving into their peak spending period from 2028 on for, well, actually many, many years. And so there's a couple of things that I would just point out to you. And this is looking at live birth rates. And when you see the green here down the bottom, it says period in the 46 to 50 age group. Boomers were which really drove our economy for a long time, were in the 46 to 50 age group from 92 to 2014. And then millennials are entering that age group between 2028 and 2046. So the opportunity for the millennial to be an economic force in terms of spending, which tends to fuel inflation if it's going up, they could really be fuel for inflation because they're coming into peak consumption years. Now, I say that, and we go back. Let me ask you a question. How many folks in here are in that 30 to 46 age group? And my question is, are you spending more now than you were in your 20 to 30 range? Put yes or no in the chat. So you make the argument right there. Now, by the way, who's in the 46 to 52 range, and you're spending more today than you did in your 30s and early 40s? Yes or no? You probably got kids in college. You've got, all 1,000%. Yes. Now, that's a lot of percent there, but there you go. Adrian, yes. So understand this. Everything Michael said, was right on. And then this is another issue that is one of those demographic things that you just have to know it is. And it's not going away. And the consumer is coming into that place in their life where they're going to spend more money, and that's going to impact interest rates. And we'll come back to interest rates in a minute, but let's just go through a few other headlines because, and borrow some of these, find your own. Housing has a problem bigger than interest rates. So let's go down here. The last leg in the inflation fight is to reduce shelter inflation. And this can only occur if builders are able to construct more attainable, affordable housing. Dietz had in a report that showed, by the way, that home builder confidence, was back in May, was actually down a little bit. Then let's take a look at this. Now, by the way, Keller Williams is always providing us with great resources like this. This is from Gary's vision speech. And so you notice that this, let's talk about what this is. It's new home starts. And to stay just current with household formation, the ideal new housing starts a year is 1 million housing starts. Now, you notice we were there in 2007. And then, of course, we had the crash. And you notice we didn't get back to 1 million housing starts until 2021. And just barely over 1 million. 2022, we went backwards a little bit. 23, with the interest rate shakeup, we went below ideal. And so Fannie Mae and others there, you will find articles out there that say, based upon how you measure this, we're anywhere from 3 to 5 million single family homes deficit in terms of what we need because of all these years that we were building less than what we needed. And so it's created this huge deficit, and that really the builders having a difficult time catching up because there's not enough. What also happened during this time of the Great Recession is they stopped developing dirt. Following the recovery, it was tougher to get financing. Builders were holding back and they were more conservative. And so all this is played into now you've got the millennials, this huge group of demographics that are coming into the period of life when they want to buy a home. And then you've got the boomer generation who's not moving out of their home, who wants to age in place, and you have a massive housing shortage. Here's what it
Can I
looks
comment
like.
on the last slide?
What's that?
Can I comment on the last slide?
Sure.
So what's the commonality that you see on this slide? From 2005 to 2007, it's the same thing what happened in 2020 to 2022. This was a man-made cause thing. Mortgage companies were doing no docs. They were creating loans for people that shouldn't have been buying houses, and that stimulated the real estate market. So again, the same thing that happened in 2020 to 2022 with all the sales that they created those sales. So you're losing inventory. You're taking away the inventory from 2008 to 2010, selling it from 2005 to 2007, and that's why you have the depletion, and that's why you have all those crashes, all those subprime loans, and that's what caused it. It was a man-made problem.
Well, and then of course today the great thing is, the situation we have in our economy today. We don't have those crazy loan issues
Wow.
that caused a lot of this problem. We have a very stable default rate, out there. So, the thought that this is going to be somehow like, the past is really folly. But let's take a look at a few more headlines. And again, these are the things that if you're going to build powerful messages, you have to take time to really understand what is it you're combating out there? What messages are they already receiving? And how do I position a message to counter the media and help them think differently about our hyperlocal market? Now, it says, what will happen to home prices if inflation stays high? Here's what some experts think. And let's take a look. What do the experts think? Well, they say today home prices are increasing in part because there are relatively little listed inventory, which has greatly benefited new home buyers. Adding that if this trend continues, we can expect new single-family home construction to remain relatively elevated. Brian Durham says also that thinks home prices could rise if mortgage rates fall. So it goes to the point Mike was talking about earlier, is we could be right into bidding wars. Now, the most significant price increases will happen again if and when mortgage rates come back down, and millions, because you remember who you have out there. You've got that millennial generation who is ready to pour into this market, and millions more home buyers come off the sidelines and back into the market. Notes Durham. Unless the supply of homes increases significantly, you can expect prices to continue increasing, barring something bad happening in the economy. Now, here's the big question mark. Is something bad going to happen in the economy? The fact that you've got a consumer coming into their peak spending years, and they're a fairly large consumer group, suggests that probably not. It might be a temporary dip, and yet probably not. And if it does happen, that something in the economy, again, it's going to be self-induced because we're over fighting, inflation. Then, of course, you said, now, by the way, here's the challenge with economists. They all have different opinions, and this is why you have to form one, because there's a different opinion out there from everybody. Home prices could remain flat. Also said there could be a scenario where home prices remain flat because renting's more affordable in some areas. Then it says home prices could fall. So I guess they got it all covered. There's a story where you can't get it wrong. It says Dillman also said that home prices could fall despite high inflation if the economy suffers job losses. And so, okay, then you go, so jobs report came out. It wasn't quite as robust, as we hoped. Again, that's just 1 month, and yet we've had many months of good job report. What's reality? Well, the reality is we've been at extremely low levels of unemployment. The report came out this last week, 4.1%. And yet when you look historically, 4.1 and since 2000, we've only been, lower than 4.1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 4.1 is still historically low unemployment. So one can't say, oh my God, sky's falling. We've got 4.1% employment. Now, I'm waiting for updated data on the next slide, but here's how many of you, when you go down fast food row in your marketplace, where all the restaurants are, the fast food places, and you see help wanted, and 2 years ago it was $14 an hour, then it was $16 an hour, now maybe it's $18 an hour, maybe it's now $20 an hour at the same place. And what's happening is the job market is competing for not enough workers. Retiring millennials, and of course it's different in some parts of the market. And yet, if we look at this broadly, and this was beginning of the year, there were 8.79 million job openings and 6.3 million people looking for work. And when you got a $2.4 million delta there, it tells you that that's a problem. And it means we could also continue to have ongoing wage growth. And by the way, if wage growth keeps up with inflation, the consumer stays okay.
Right.
In fact, we were just going through recently with a group. There was an article that was measuring affordability versus what the median home cost. And Austin, Texas, one of my markets, is now just 7% affordability versus median home price is only off 7%. LA County, for you Californians, is 98% above affordability. And of course, that has to do with extremely low supply. So finding and knowing that information is helpful. Is the housing market, ready for deja vu? Is this 1980 or 2024? The housing market has deja vu, but don't expect a crash. I'm not going to get all into this one. Essentially, it's saying we've been in a market like this before, and when we had high inflation in the 80s. And so, there are the stories here that make the case. But let's go look at that. So we had, if you go back 1973, we have a high inflation period. Rates are coming up. They eclipsed 8% in 1973. And of course, they're just kind of hovering around 9 and some change for a while. People are hoping they're going to come down, and yet inflation stays sticky. And ultimately, rates don't get back to 8% until 1992, sub 8%. And so could this time be like that time? Could we be in for a period, given the consumer, low inventory, low supply, wage demands? Could we be in a prolonged period of elevated interest rates? And when we say elevated, if you look historically over time, the 50-plus year history, 7.81 has been the average. And that's taken in the low times and the high times. These 2%, 3%, those were unicorns. That was the COVID crazy stimulus. And the question we get oftentimes, now here's a big one. I want you to write this down. Why didn't interest rates after the Great Recession, you notice they dipped. 2012 was about when the recession kind of came out of recession and we went into recovery. And yet interest rates didn't come back up to the 6% trend line that we have over the shorter term. And somebody might ask, well, why didn't interest rates go up if it's driven by inflation or the economy? Why didn't they go back up after we came out of the Great Recession? It's because the consumer was quiet. The boomers were coming out of their peak spending. The millennial generation was not yet in their peak spending. The in-between generation was much smaller. And so the truth is there wasn't any pressure on inflation. So rates got to stay low. And right now there's so much pressure on inflation that maybe we have deja vu again. Looking for more articles. There's a magic number. Barbara Corcoran tells Americans when housing prices will go through the roof. Here's how to set yourself up today. And essentially, she said if rates go down just another percentage point, which she was hoping for by year end, rates are going to go, I mean, prices are going to go through the roof because everyone will come out to buy. And so, again, these are the things. In fact, she said, don't be surprised if we see real estate jumps really quickly of 8 to 10% if rates come down. So let's talk about how do we communicate our message in our MOFIR. So we've just kind of right in here, we can see some ways that we can pull data together. We can pull stories together. We can communicate a message. We can use what's happening out in the marketplace. I'm going to come back to this in a minute, and I'm going to give you a conversation that'll lead people into the real estate discussion. We'll come back to this in a minute. One of the things that we developed, and we've shared this with our Never Ending Referrals community, as a consulting guide. And I developed this for my agents. And it was, how do I have this conversation about the market, the economy, the trends with the consumer when I'm sitting down to have that first substantive conversation? And you dig into the interest rates, past, present, future, how inflation is impacting all of this. Are we overvalued? That's something you have to address. Then, of course, getting hyper local with what's going on in your market. Here, we've got a case for, we have 8 times the choices in terms of inventory versus the COVID crazy era. Timing the market, how that's a fool's game. And then, there are deals to be found in our market. And, here's the case for lower interest rates and builder offerings. And we've got all this negotiation opportunity. And then, of course, going through and just adding the value of the home buying process and what happens to help people lean into the market. So today, truth is, you got to be that local economist. And they have to have somebody they believe in. And that means you're going to have to put out more messaging around the market and offers that invite people into a conversation. Now, I'm going to give you a conversation framework right here, and I'll just model it for you quickly. Then I'm going to tell you about an opportunity if you want to access some of these resources to get more and more of this. If I'm reaching out today to my database and I know that they've got all this noise that is hitting them, I've got to have a care conversation. And, that's just creating a connection. And, care, we've got an acronym: connect, alert, refer, engage. In this case, we're just going to connect and we're going to maybe engage them a little around their questions around real estate. And so here's the salutation. You'll be able to go back and listen to this later. The salutation is, so I'm calling Michael and I say, hey, Michael, Steve Schlueter over at Keller Williams. And hey, I trust you're doing well. Hey, I was reaching out to some of my friends and clients in our network just to touch base. I've been having folks, ask me what's going on with this crazy real estate market. Is the market going to crash? What are interest rates going to do? And so I just thought I'd, connect and maybe shed some light on things a little bit. Now, I've introduced the salutation. I've introduced the purpose of the call. I'm not going to go into that yet. Now I'm going to ask a forward question. So one of the things we talk about in Never Ending Referrals is the need to connect. And this is where you build the empathy piece. We've got to make sure that when we're connecting, we're also building the empathy. They know that they're cared about. And so I'm going to ask a forward question. And maybe it's something I saw on Mike's social media. Hey, Mike, I saw that you were, you and the family took a little trip over 4th of July weekend to blank. How was that? And whatever they say, I'm going to ask an appropriate follow-up question. And now I'm making this very conversational. And then I'll transition back to the purpose of the call. So, Mike, as I said, there's a lot of confusion out there. in the real estate market and real estate space today, and thought I'd just reach out to my folks, shed light on things, and just curious. Now, write this question down. I'm just curious. What are you hearing about the real estate market here in San Antonio or wherever you are? What are you hearing, or what do you know about the real estate market here in San Antonio? Now, rather than you throwing up what's going on in the market, ask them what they know or believe. Now, let's say, well, we're just kind of here, interest rates are high. We're kind of thinking, let's see, the buzz out there seems to be they're going to come down around the elections, and of course, now write this down. Whatever they say, this is your opportunity to validate what they said or educate around what they said. Now, if they said, we believe that interest rates are going to come down before, around the election, is that a validate or an educate opportunity? I'm going to say it's an educate. And now I'm not going to make them wrong going, yeah, we have good luck. I'm going to say, I'm hearing that a lot from folks. And can I tell you what our research is revealing right now? Our research is revealing that there's just the economy, in fact, particularly the consumer, has been so strong that we're not sure what we'll see in terms of little up and down blips, but our research is saying we believe that there are probably more upward pressures on interest rates right now than lower interest rates. And of course, the reason being is, as you know, the Fed's more committed to, fighting off inflation than they are worried about what you and I pay for a mortgage. And then I might ask a question. And I said, so I'm curious, what's got you watching interest rates? You guys pondering a move? And if they say, well, no, but my nephew, they're thinking and they want to do something maybe at the end of the year when rates go down. And I might then further explain, that our concern is they may not, there's actually maybe some good opportunities in the market right now. I said, I'd be happy to do a no obligation consultation or strategy session, with your nephew. Do you mind connecting us via text? Because really anybody that's got any plans next 12 to 24 months probably ought to sit down and we can kind of go over the forces that are driving the market and chat with them. Would you mind? What's your nephew's name? Oh, great. And yeah, would you connect us via text? I'd love to help them. Would that be okay? And I've asked them to play connector. And now said, by the way, is there anything I can do for you? No, we're good. And I'm going to transition out of the business conversation and say, hey, yeah, so tell me before I let you go, tell me what you got planned for the fall. Any big trips coming up? What's the next big thing on the, on Mike's agenda, for the household? And he says whatever he says. I ask an appropriate follow question, and then I close the call. And that's a simple conversation that when done that way, it feels conversational. So you're hitting on the empathy piece, you're connecting. You may or may not make an offer for a strategy session unless you identify a need. And it's an opportunity to, whatever they say, market going to crash, interest rates, is if they're right in their assessment of the market, you don't get, you're right. You say, you've got this really dialed in. In fact, here's, based on what you said, here's what we're seeing that supports that. And demonstrate that you understand the market, that you're that go-to person. And if you have to educate, do it without making them, quote, wrong. And you can say, hearing that from a lot of folks, that little rumor is out there. And yet, let me kind of share with you kind of our perspective and our research. And so you're acknowledging and validating them, and then you're educating around what might be the real opportunity. So let me pause for just a second. Any questions around any of that before we go to a last point? Megan put that question in the chat if you want to click on that. All right.
So instead of waiting for the news to tell us how the market's going to be, why can't we as agents get together, educate ourselves? Like anybody in 2020 to 2023 can make a sale. That was a gimme. But if we want the prices to come down a little bit, instead of buying someone's listing that we know that's overpriced and putting it on the market and hurting the market even more, why can't we educate ourselves on our level? So this way we can educate the sellers on where they need to be, So this way we have more competitive offers and it's helping the economy at the same time.
Well, and Michael, so it's a question, and I'll say that that's the whole issue is we have fewer agents out there that are educating themselves.
Yeah.
And what's going to be the differentiator between, and here when I talk to team leaders in market centers right now, this is what I hear. They said, Steve, it's the haves and have-nots. The folks that really are doing the study, they understand the market, they're communicating effectively, they're doing well. And then I have the have-nots who are just waiting for things to change in a more favorable manner so that, well, the truth is we went from a gatherer's market, like you said, anybody could pick up a transaction and it was reactive. And we've gone from a gatherer's market to a hunter's market. And a hunter's market requires you to be very strategic and have the right conversations dialed in and understand the economy. That's why you've got to be prepared. These are the main issues. It's inflation, interest rates, home prices, the market to crash. What is your story for your market and what the opportunity is? So your job, guys, if you're going to, as Michael said, and it is our job today. In bold, we say there's 5 parts to the agent's job description. I've added a 6th. Here's the 5 parts. It's lead generation. It's lead follow-up. It's go on appointments. It's negotiate contracts. It's role play and practice. That's 5. Number 6 is study your market and trends and build the proper messages around the market and trends for your market. So again, we went through the consulting guide real quick. Here's what I want to say. This comes from Dan Sullivan. And right now, when you think about this journey you're on, and you got to commit that you're going to be the trusted real estate advisor for your market, for your database, for your clientele, and make that commitment and know with it, comes courage. I'm going to have to show up differently. I'm going to have these phone conversations and ask the question. And I'm going to have to be prepared to skillfully educate and validate people's responses. And of course, all this is going to do is build capability in me, which is going to lead to confidence. And it starts with commitment. Are you going to be that person that your database goes to that is authentic, that they trust because you understand the market and because they know that you care about them and their well-being? And it starts with that commitment. And then you've got to work on the soft skills to make that happen. So you go from existing confidence when you add commitment and courage to new capability, and you get massive, massive breakthroughs. So if you'd like to find out more about, how to do this, to get these soft skills to really make your database fly, we want to invite you to join us in our Never Ending Referrals coaching community. In fact, we are up for our next live session is actually at noon Central Time today, about an hour from now. And you can register, you can join us. Sessions are recorded. We're starting off back at session 1 today. And we go right through the core 8 lessons that lead you to database mastery. In fact, if you can go to neverendingreferrals.com, Megan, if you'll drop a link in a chat, if you'd like to enroll today and join us at noon, to be part of our Never Ending Referrals community, it's $39 a month. There's a 5-month minimum enrollment. You go through the program as often as you want. We have special bonus sessions like this, where we're going through what is the market of the moment each quarter, what are the conversations of the quarter that are going to help us move forward. And again, go to neverendingreferrals.com or just go to the chat, and you've got a link right there where you can join us. So I'd love it. Thoughts, questions? What's your takeaways about what the opportunity is for you in this market we're in today? What'd you hear?
Steve, I hear that we're still in business.
Hey, is that Bill?
Yes, boss man.
You are still in business, Bill. Yeah. Hey, by the way, you got military referrals going to the biggest Army base in the world. There's your connection right there, Bill Vernon at Fort Cavazos in Bell County, Texas. So there you go. So we're still in business, huh, Bill?
Yes, sir. And we need to act accordingly.
Yep.
Well, you're in business if you choose. and I'm, it's a choice right now. Again, it is really that market of haves and have-nots, and the market isn't going to decide this for you. You're going to decide, and you have to make a decision.
Right. You hit it right there. If you wait, the market's going to decide where you're going to be. You need to educate yourself. You need to get out there. But yeah, you can't wait. You got to do it now.
Well, the last time we had a major shift, guys, over 300,000 agents left the National Association of Realtors. And that's actually getting ready to happen again. And you know what? That'll be a good thing for the people that lean in, because you will capture disproportionately more market share, and the units available per agent will go up as we rebound. And so, and again, it's only going to serve the people that lean in and make the choice to take control of their business. Any other thoughts, ahas, insights from our conversation today? And Bill, we do have a Bell County version of that on the Williamson County resource page, so make sure you get that.
We'll do it, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, hey, I trust I'll see some of you at noon. You've got the link there. Economic conversations are great, always encouraging, always informative. Thank you, Kathy. Ray, should you share a copy of the presentation? Again, you'll get a follow-up probably tomorrow. Recording of the video, all that'll be there for you so that you can go back and revisit this. In fact, Megan, let's in that follow-up, go ahead and send them a copy of the PowerPoint too. And just remember that, those slides, make sure when you go use them, you're obeying, the various copyright laws, and be careful where you put stuff. We don't want you to get sued. All right. Thank you, Lucy.
Steve, someone did ask about MOFIR smart plans and where they could find those.
Yeah, if you just go to the Smart Plan Library in Command, and you'll find that particular one that we were talking about is, I think it's called The Upside of Elevated Interest Rates. And so we also have some smart plans that we make available for the folks in our community. But if you want to go ahead and send that one out, that's there. Note that they just made some changes to Command, so you may not be able to edit that if you need to make an edit to it to personalize it for your market. So you may need to cut and paste it into your own as far as that goes. So old smart plans cannot be edited right now. So, all right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you. Take care.